absolute value and piecewise function, quiz 1 review. Okay, so we have the graph of y is equal to the absolute value of x, and it's reflected across the x-axis, then scaled vertically by a factor of 3/8. So we have y is equal to 3 over 8 with the absolute value of x. But what's happening here is that our v, which is going up because we know the 3/8 positive, is being reflected across the x-axis. So when it's reflected, it's going to go in the opposite direction. So instead of being at a positive 3/8, it's going to become a negative 3/8. So what we're looking for is y is equal to a negative 3/8 absolute value of x. So our best choice here would be D. Okay, I want to make a graph, so we're going to go ahead and write down our question here. So we're going to say g of x is equal to 7 absolute value of x plus 2 minus 3. We have a 7. The 7 is positive. It's going to go up. It's also going to be a tight graph, a narrow graph. It's not going to be very wide. The x itself is going to equal negative 2 because it's the opposite number that you see. The y you accept, so the y is a negative 3. So our vertex is going to be a negative 2 followed by a negative 3. So our vertex is a negative 2, negative 3. So we're going to be at negative 2 and then down to negative 3. Our graph is going to go up, but again, we don't know how far it's going to go up, and we don't know if it's this, how wide it's going to be, but we know that it's fairly tight graph there. So now we look at our numbers here, and we see that it's at a negative 2, because you can see right here it's at a negative 2. So what's the first number to the left? Negative 1. What's the first number to, what numbers to the left? Actually, to the right is a negative 1, and what number to the left is a negative 3. So to the left of it, to the right of it is a negative 1, to the left of it is a negative 3. So to the right is negative 1, to the left is negative 3. So here's my negative 2. We want the immediate number to the right, which is a negative 1, and the immediate number to the left, which is negative 3. So let's go ahead and go with, either one. So we can go with the negative 1 or the negative 3. So let's just go with the negative 1. So our function is actually called g of x. I don't want to call it f. I want to keep the same name there. So I'm going to say g of x. So g of x is going to become a negative 1 is equal to 7. This is going to be negative 1 plus 2 minus 3. So we're going to say 7. We're going to have 1 inside minus 3. So now we're going to take the absolute value of 1, which is a positive 1, minus 3. So g of a negative 1, now we're going to multiply. 7 times 1 is 7 minus 3. Finish it out. Do our operation. 7 minus 3 is equal to 4. Now we can write this as a point and say negative 1 gives me 4. So we want to be at negative 1, which is here, but we want to go up 4 levels, so we want to actually go up 1 more. So negative 1 gives me 4. Now if I was to use the negative 3 here, the negative 3 plus 2 would be a negative 1. But what is the absolute value of a negative 1? Well, it's a positive 1. So everything here would all be repeated. So it would be a positive 1 here. We'd have 7 minus 3. Eventually we get 4. So negative 3 would also be at 4. So again, it doesn't matter if you take the first number to the right. In this case here, I use the negative 1, or use the first number to the left, which is a negative 3. Okay, we have a translation here, and what we notice is that it was located here. The blue was here, and this time the red is here. So again, they're basically the same shape, but what happened is it was just moved over. So we see our different answers here. We see the x plus 3, the x plus 3, the x minus 3, the x minus 3. We have a plus 1 and a negative 1. So our original one, so our original graph was f of x is equal to the absolute value of x. And here, everything is 0. Your x is 0 because there's no number there after the x, and your y is 0. So everything is 0, 0, and of course the vertex itself would be 0. Now this new one right here, the new one, we go over to the right 3. So let's make a line here. So our new one is going to be at positive 3, negative 1. So this would actually be our vertex. So our vertex for the new one, so the vertex for the new one would actually be at a positive 3 and a negative 1. So this would be my x and this would be my y. And the new one is also called g, so we'd start off with g of x. Now, right here, what we have is our absolute value, and then we have our x. So we're going to do our absolute value followed by our x. So the absolute value is x. Now we want to take the opposite of 3, see, because we know that x is equal to 3. We know that y is equal to a negative 1. So we want to take the opposite of a positive 3, so inside it's going to show as a negative 3. As for the y, there's no adjustment to it. Whatever you see is what you place down. So we got the opposite of a positive 3, which is a negative 3. So opposite of 3 is a negative 3, and then y is a negative 1. So we want negative 3 followed by negative 1. So my best choice here would be D. Okay, let's take a look at this problem here. Again, we want to look at our possible choice here. This should be a matching one. And they give us variations here. They give us fractions such as 3 over 2x, negative 2 over 3x. We have the x minus 3 minus 2, and the x minus 2 plus 3. Now if you knew that one trick, you could answer this question right away. You could immediately say, oh, the answer is B. And the reason why you could say B is this is our original graph is the blue graph, and the red graph is our new graph. And for the G, and notice that the only one that's going down is, and then remember when you go down, it's a negative number in front. This is a positive number, no good, it's going up. This is a negative number, so it's going down. In front of all these absolute values is a positive 1, so they're going up. So the only one that refers to going down is B. So B is the only one that's showing us that it's going down. Because looking at this, we know that it's going to go down. Now again, as for the the 2, 3, you can go down 2 and then you go to the right 3. So you can see, go back on it, down 2, right 3. But this one should be anything going down, should be anything that's negative. So since it's going down, we're looking for something that has a negative sign in front. So we want to look for the negative sign. So that's a big tip off there. So the only one that gives me that is B. But remember, they did show this as a negative 2/3. So negative 2/3, and to get that, you can see we go down 2 and then to the right 3. So B should be my answer. Okay, the following question here, we want to go from f of x to the new one. Notice here that x is now equal to a negative 2, y is equal to a positive 4. Now, where are the negative numbers? Again, we've done this before. This is 0, this is positive, this is negative, this is to the right, and this is to the left. So the right is positive, left is negative, so we know this is left. We're going to go left. Actually, we're going to go left 2. The positive 4 is up, because we know if it's positive it goes up, if it's negative it goes down. So we want to go 2 to the left, we want to go 4 up. So let me click this off. So we want to go up 4, and then we said that we're going to go to the left, but it's going to be a positive 2. So we're going to go to a positive 2 there. Don't say it's a negative 2. That's like a double negation, because you're already saying it's going to the left. So you're already given a direction. So you always have to write your numbers as positive. So as long as you give it a direction, your numbers will always be positive. So by saying left 2, that's sufficient. Don't go left negative 2. That's too much.